Friday night took care of my weekday blues. I woke up, had breakfast, and read the news. I'm feeling relaxed, refreshed, and renewed. But I feel like there's something I'm forgetting to do.
Hey, Toby, the show's about to start.
Oh yeah, it's a Saturday show. 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 Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Show, AADL TV's one and only Saturday morning variety show. My name is Toby, and this is Otto, and today we're going to talk about all things dinosaurs. As you can see, Otto's dressed up a little bit because him and I are going to put on a nice little show for you guys. So we're going to jump right into the word of the day, and we'll see you here back at the end of the show.
Hi, Christopher.
Hey, Kashi, how you doing?
Great. You know what we're talking about today?
No.
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs? I love
Me
dinosaurs.
too. Do you want to know my favorite one?
Sure I do.
Tyrannosaurus rex, also known as T-Rex.
Wow, T-Rex was huge, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
What's your favorite?
My favorite is Ankylosaurus.
Oh.
Ankylosaurus was kind of low and had kind of a club tail and a lot of armor on it.
That's right.
Shall we see what Lexi's favorite is?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what do you think it's going to be?
Wow, that's a really long word.
Wow. Lexi's favorite. Can you sound that out?
Brontosaurus. Brontosaurus.
Right, Brontosaurus. What? Oh, wait a minute. I thought Brontosaurus was not a dinosaur.
Well, I think a few years ago they thought it wasn't, and then they thought it was something else. But I think maybe they changed their minds again.
Oh, so Lexi's right.
Yeah,
Wow. Well, are you ready for the summer game code?
I am.
I wonder if we're going to change the name someday to Autumn Game Code.
I don't know.
But for now, here it is. It's 6 letters.
6 letters.
It's the last name of a famous English paleontologist and fossil collector.
Oh.
And the tongue twister, she sells seashells by the seashore, is often said to be about her.
Oh, wow.
So this is a good one. I hope you enjoy looking for the answer.
I'm sure we will.
Okay, I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Good morning. Welcome to Plastifeet Theater. In this edition, we'll be taking a look at a famous scientific rivalry, one that shook the very foundations of natural history, one that had an impact well into the future and throughout the dim and distant past. Today, we revisit the Bone Wars. Ah, a fellow American. How do you do, sir? My name is Othniel Charles Marsh. What brings you to this part of the world?
Hello, Mr. Marsh. My name is Edward Drinker Cope. I come from a wealthy Quaker farming family in Pennsylvania. My father wanted me to take over the family farm, but I am far more interested in studying the natural world. I've come to Germany to study natural history and to avoid fighting in the American Civil War.
Ah, a man of natural history. Huzzah! I am also here to study the natural world. I come from a poor family in upstate New York, and my dreams of being a natural historian would have been dashed had it not been for my rich Uncle Peabody, who has financed all of my education.
including this European trip. Tell me, Cope, what about the natural world interests you?
Well, ever since the word dinosaur was created 18 years ago, I have been fascinated by these giant fossil lizards, and I intend to find, name, and catalog as many of them as I can.
By George, this is amazing! I too am fascinated with dinosaurs and dinosaur bones, and I, like you, want to discover, describe, and preserve as many of them as I can.
Well, based on this mutual interest, I think that you and I should be fast friends forever. We wouldn't let a few dinosaur bones come between us, right?
Now that we've met the players, stay tuned for the continuation of this story here on Plastifeet Theater.
The other day, while I was out enjoying a bike ride in the countryside, I came across a pretty startling sight. A Parasaurolophus standing in someone's front yard. Okay, on closer inspection, it was a statue of a Parasaurolophus, but pretty lifelike. The Parasaurolophus was an herbivorous dinosaur that lived in the late Cretaceous period, right here in what's now called North America. Then I noticed a couple of other statues. Over here, locked in combat, is a Triceratops facing a very fierce-looking raptor. Triceratops means three-horned face. I wouldn't want to be on the wrong end of those horns. With this raptor, I wasn't sure. A velociraptor is about the size of a large turkey, about 15 pounds, and lived in what is now Asia in the late Cretaceous period. But the Utah raptor is like the velociraptor's older cousin, weighing about 2,200 pounds. It lived in what is now called, you guessed it, Utah. Either way, these raptors were fearsome carnivores, possessing lots of sharp, knife-like teeth. Yikes. Floating serenely above this scene is a tiny pterodactyl. Pterodactyls are not dinosaurs. Millions of years ago, dinosaurs ruled the earth, but pterosaurs ruled the skies. Of course, today, some ancestors of dinosaurs are still among us. Birds. Keep an eye out for them on your next bike ride.
I'm going to show you how to make an origami brontosaurus in this video. And I've got two-sided paper that's square cut. And if you fold it over in half and then open it up and fold it over again, that'll be step one. And then make a kind of kite shape here, and the small little points can be a little bit tricky right at the end. And then repeat on the other side. Now open it up, fold it over, and you're going to fold those sides down like that. And again, watch out for those little ends. It can be kind of tricky. Just take your time and make sure your folds are right. The more accurate you can be, the better your brontosaurus will come out. Now, fold those sides in again. The nice thing about this two-sided paper is that you can see things a bit easier. Now we're just going to fold those flaps down and do that on both sides. And if you've got a ruler handy, you can bend the top over after you open those flaps back up and then make a sturdy crease right there. Now, this is the tricky part. You've got to open these flaps, and I really struggled with this stage, but you're going to open up the flaps and then press them down flat, and then do that on both sides. Then you're going to go to the top, fold those tops down, and now you're getting close. Open that up and use your straight edge again, bend that over, make a good crease right there, and then open those up and make a good crease. We're creating the legs right now. And crease the other side as well. Now we're going to fold it in two, and we're going to bend those legs over. I'm sorry it's a bit out of focus there, or out of the view. Then we're going to bend the neck up, and if it bunches up like that, it's okay because you're not going to see any of it at the end. So make a crease there, and then you kind of open that up, push your finger up into that. This is the neck, and we're going to bend it backwards, and that's how we've got that neck, and all of our imperfections are really covered up there. Then we're going to bend the neck down to make the head. And we're going to push down on that to open that head up and bend it sideways. It looks a bit like the crane head. And then tuck that pointy end in, and we've got the head of the brontosaurus. Now all that remains are the feet. Bend those back like that. And same on the other side. And then the same with the back two legs. And I learned a lot of how to do this from a site called Origami 4IK. And we're just about done. Press everything down, flip it over, and there's our finished brontosaurus.
If you love dinosaurs as much as I do, I have good news for you. Anyone can find fossils of dinosaurs in the wild, you just have to be in the right place. Some people make it their job every day to find fossils, and those people are called paleontologists. Paleontology is the study of dinosaurs, plants, and other animals that came far before humans had a written record of things. And we find fossils inside of rocks. Now, they're not just any rocks. They're special rocks, and it helps paleontologists to understand what types of rocks are most likely to have fossils in them. And they do this through the study of geology. Geology is the study of rocks and all their different types. There's three main types of rocks: igneous rocks that come from magma and volcanoes, metamorphic rocks that come from rocks that have been changed by heat and pressure inside of our planet, and sedimentary rocks, which are formed from hardened sand, silt, mud, and other types of soil. And sedimentary rocks are the ones that we find fossils in. Geology also helps us to know where those sedimentary rocks are going to be. Rock takes a very, very long time to form. To give you a little bit better of an idea of exactly how long it takes to make rocks, here is an analogy that geologists use to explain geologic time. Our planet is 4.6 billion years old. That's a super long period of time, but during it, life evolved into the animals we know today. This timeline chart shows us, in perspective, how much time passed in the history of our planet before dinosaurs evolved. Dinosaurs existed over a period of 165 million years right towards the end of Earth's history. It's the orange line on the very top of this chart. Knowing that excludes the majority of rocks that exist on Earth, about 90%. That limits the number of rocks we're looking for, but how do we know where they are? Knowing which rocks have fossils in them sometimes takes trial and error. The first fossils found by humans were found by accident in rocks exposed after being buried for millions of years. But over decades of fossil hunting, scientists have mapped where they found fossils, what kind of fossils they are, and studied the rocks around them. To understand what I mean, let's look at how fossils form. Fossils form when an animal dies, usually in water, and is rapidly buried by sediment before it has a chance to decay or be moved by predators. Once an animal is buried, more and more sediment is deposited on top of it. The pressure of all this material squishes the animal. Dissolved minerals in the groundwater around the sediment fill the tiny spaces inside of the animal's bones. This combination of pressure, chemical reactions, and time eventually turns the sediments into rock, and the bones into mineralized fossils. As more and more sediment, plants, and animals are deposited on top of our fish, more fossils form. They're the spiral shells in the last picture of this timeline. Geologists call this the law of superposition, basically that younger rocks and fossils are always on top of older rocks and fossils. But how do they get back up to the surface for us to find? Our planet is constantly changing through earthquakes, erosion, and other forces. These forces push fossil-carrying rocks back up to the surface for us to find. Once they get to the surface, we can look at the rocks and their relation to one another to guess or hypothesize which rocks have the fossils we're looking for. Now that we know what rocks we're looking for and where they are, we're ready to go on a dig. But we're going to need some tools first. There's one tool above all the others that you absolutely have to have. And you can find something similar in your toolbox at home. But you're not going to use this tool to hang pictures on your wall. Can you guess the tool that we're going to need to take in the field with us?
Oh, Marsh, I am so glad that you were able to join me here at this gigantic dinosaur dig in New Jersey. Who would have known that so many dinosaur fossils were right here on the East Coast, close to both where you and I grew up?
Truly fascinating. It is a miracle that we have this wealth of natural history in our own backyards. Tell me, Cope, what have you been up to?
Well, Marsh, last year I named a new species of tetrapod after you, the Colosteus marshii. And since then I've come here to dig up even more fossils.
Thank you so much, Cope. I appreciate you naming a tetrapod after me. See, I knew we would be fast friends forever. Who is this man?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. These are the pit operators. They are responsible for managing this dig as it is too big for just one man to work. They are here all the time and they send fossils back to my lab after removing them from the rock. They're good people and good people to know.
Thanks, Cope. Well, I am headed back to my offices at Yale University to study more fossils.
Until then, Marsh.
Hey, pit operator man, how about when you find those fossils, instead of sending them to Cope, you send them to me at Yale? And for your troubles, here's $100, which is a lot in 1868.
Ah, a case of intrigue. Bribery and dinosaur bones? Seems as if that's where we're headed. Stay tuned for the continuation of this story here on Plastifeet Theater.
When I was a kid, I had all kinds of dinosaur toys. Maybe you'll recognize some of them. I had a Tyrannosaurus, a Brontosaurus, a Triceratops, a Stegosaurus, and a pterodactyl. But if you know a lot about dinosaurs, something seems a little off. Is this really what a Tyrannosaurus Rex looked like? Even though the Tyrannosaurus Rex lived over 64 million years ago, we're learning new things about it all the time. And one of the things that we've learned since I was a kid is that the Tyrannosaurus rex really doesn't look like this. Stegosaurus is chill, though.
I'm chill.
Not only did I have dinosaur toys, I loved learning about dinosaurs. And one of my favorite books was this one, Dinosaurs of the Land, Sea, and Air. This was a pretty cutting-edge book for its time. Let's look how it stands up today.
So on the cover of the book, we have a very upright standing Tyrannosaurus rex, just like my toy, as well as some brontosauruses feeding in the water, which we now know is not true. And you can tell how much I read and loved this book as a kid. Okay, so it's basically full of stories about different dinosaurs. And some of them are not true dinosaurs, like Dimorphodon, which was a flying reptile. The illustrations are really nice, but I have to say a lot of the dinosaurs in it just look kind of maybe stiff and uncomfortable in not quite natural positions. And they told very naturalistic stories about a day in the life of each of these creatures. So some sauropods like Mamenchosaurus, some iguanodons, lots of different types of dinosaurs and other animals represented. And here's a story about an ichthyosaurus, which was actually a swimming reptile and not a true dinosaur. Wait a minute. Is that a woolly mammoth? Woolly mammoths lived almost 60 million years after dinosaurs.
Okay, maybe the Dinosaurs of the Land, Sea, and Air is a little out of date. Let's find some newer books to learn about dinosaurs.
The new books about dinosaurs I chose were The World of Dinosaurs by Mark A. Norell, Feathered Dinosaurs, The Origin of Birds by John Long and Peter Schouten, and Dinosaurs, The Grand Tour by Kieran Pym. From this book, I learned that we thought dromaeosaurids like velociraptors, which we thought were covered in bare skin like reptiles, were actually covered in feathers, and they used these to keep warm or for display. Likewise, ceratopsians like Triceratops and Chasmosaurus, instead of dragging their tails on the ground, held them up as a counterbalance to their heads. And the Tyrannosaurus, who we thought is lumbering through the landscape with his tail dragging on the ground, walking upright, actually walked with its tail upright as a counterbalance to its head, much like a bird. And also like a bird, it was probably covered in fuzz-like feathers. We're finding out more about dinosaur coloration too. Scientists were able to analyze the pigment cells fossilized in this Microraptor skeleton and discover that it was covered in glossy black feathers like a crow or a starling.
So the lesson here is not that older scientists were stupid or didn't know what they were doing. They were just doing the best with the information they had. And we know what we know now because we were building on their discoveries. As technology improves and we uncover more fossils, we're learning new things about dinosaurs all the time. Don't worry, guys, I'll always love you, even if you're completely historically inaccurate.
Do you know what the Michigan State fossil is? It's not technically a dinosaur, but it is really awesome. The mastodon was designated as the official state fossil of Michigan in 2002, thanks in part to the students at Slauson Middle School here in Ann Arbor. The students in Jeffrey Bradley's class raised $1,500 to support updates to the University of Michigan Museum of Natural History's exhibits, and they successfully campaigned to make the mastodon the official state fossil of Michigan, which included a letter-writing campaign, a rally on the Capitol lawn, and testimony from Jeffrey Bradley and several of his students in support of the bill. Mastodons lived in North and Central America up until their extinction 10 to 11,000 years ago, which was likely caused by overhunting. Mastodons lived in herds and were predominantly forest-dwelling animals that lived on a mixed diet obtained by browsing and grazing, similar to their distant relatives, modern elephants. Mastodons were usually 7 to 9 feet in height at the shoulders, with a build similar to current Asian elephants. They are typically depicted with a thick, woolly mammoth-like hair, but there is no real preserved evidence for this. Mastodon bones are commonly found in Michigan. In 1927, a Kalamazoo street crew found vertebrae, tusks, and ribs of a mastodon on Patterson Avenue. One of the most complete mastodon skeletons ever found was discovered near Owasso, Michigan in the 1940s. Hundreds of mastodon fossils have been continuously discovered throughout the state of Michigan, even as recently as just a few years ago. Another nearly complete mastodon skeleton was found in 2016 in a dig led by Daniel Fisher, a professor of paleontology who has worked to unearth many mastodon fossils throughout his career. The University of Michigan Museum of Natural History, right here in town, is the only place in the world where you can see a male and female mastodon skeleton side by side, and see a mastodon skeleton paired with a mastodon trackway. In fact, this mastodon trackway was discovered near Saline, Michigan, and is the only one ever found. Mastodons are truly amazing and have a unique connection to our great state of Michigan. Maybe one day soon you can visit the Museum of Natural History and see these massive and majestic creatures for yourself.
Hello, welcome to the Evolution Gallery at the museum. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between teeth and claws on different dinosaurs and how paleontologists can use those differences to figure out how these dinosaurs might have hunted differently or what they ate. So I want you guys to look at this table. These are all different casts of teeth and claws, and I want you to see if you can figure out what ones are teeth and what ones are claws. Keep in mind too, since these are casts, some of them will show up as a different color than they would have been in real life. Alright, now that you guys have some guesses, I'm going to sort these out. So I'm going to put the claws on this side and I'm going to put the teeth over here. And you guys can see what ones you guessed right. Some of these are a little tricky. Now this is a claw, and these are all the teeth. Alright, did you get them all right? What ones were trickier to guess? So there are some of these that look really similar, right? Like this tooth, this is a Giganotosaurus tooth. It looks pretty similar to some of these claws, right? But if you look closer, there's a lot of little details on these specimens that can give you clues as to whether they're a tooth or a claw. So starting with the teeth, one thing you might notice about this group is that they're all kind of weird shapes, right? This tooth looks a lot different than this tooth, which looks even different than this tooth. So if you come across something and it's kind of a weird shape, it's probably a tooth and not a claw. Another distinct feature about teeth is that they're really shiny usually. So this is really obvious on this Giganotosaurus tooth or this T-Rex tooth. They're shiny because of the enamel that's covering them. So if you look at your own teeth, you might notice that they're shiny as well, and that's because of a coating of enamel. Claws, on the other hand, a lot of times look a lot spongier. So especially on this claw here, you can see the sponginess of the bone. When these dinosaurs were alive, these claws would have been covered in something called keratin, which is the same material that your fingers are made out of. And that would have made them shiny when the dinosaurs were living, but in fossilized form, usually you can just see the bone, which looks a lot spongier. Another big difference between teeth and claws is if you look on a tooth, especially on a tooth of a carnivore, there will be small serrations on the edge of the tooth, so you can feel these really easily. It's a lot harder to see, but there's these small serrations which would have helped make this be a more effective cutting tool for the dinosaur. This is the tip of an Allosaurus tooth. So if a tooth has small serrations, that's evidence that it's a tooth.
The last few years have been really great in terms of the number of fossils we've found. I got a gig with the U.S. Geological Survey and headed west. Although, apparently, Marsh already called dibs on a couple of dig sites in Kansas and Wyoming, but I dug there anyways. Serves him right for correcting me in the way he did. So, as you can see, we have a new species of dinosaur.
Ah, my dear boy Cope, you've presented it, but it's all wrong. You very obviously placed the head on the tail.
Who would have thought the dinosaur's neck was that long? Am I right?
I only corrected him out of love, not hate. The guy got it wrong, so what? What's that? Spies? Oh yeah, he was digging on my turf. I had to send spies along. He's not playing fair.
Yeah, there were spies, but Marsh paid them so little that I just paid them a couple bucks more and they helped me, not him. The thing about Marsh is, he's not a fun guy, period.
Dinosaurs aren't fun. They're natural history. Someone will come up with a better word for that in the future, but that's not the point. I'm out here working my tail off to find as many dinosaurs as I can, and this guy's trying to sabotage me. He's writing mean stories about me in the newspaper. He's digging on my turf. It's all I can do to stay sane.
Over the next few years, the two men engaged in a series of behavior that would have made any comic book supervillain blush. They bribed the men who oversaw fossil digs. They stole bones from each other's camps. They made deliberate efforts to undermine or even cancel some of the discoveries each other had made. And it is rumored that the two of them asked their teams out west to blow up dig sites before the other could get there. But who won the bone wars? Stay tuned for the thrilling conclusion of this episode of Plaster Feet Theater.
Today we're going to talk about one of the unsung heroes of paleontology, someone you've probably never heard of before, but who was one of the biggest contributors to our current understanding of prehistoric life and the history of the Earth. Let's dive into the amazing life of Mary Anning. Mary Anning was born in 1799. When she was only 15 months old, she survived a lightning strike that killed 3 adult women, one of whom was holding the infant Mary in her arms. This incident became part of local legend, and many attributed her curiosity, intelligence, and lively personality to the incident. Mary grew up very poor, and during this time in England, there were many food shortages. Mary's education was extremely limited, but she did attend Sunday school where she learned to read and write. When she was a kid, her family supplemented their income by selling curios, fossils with colorful local names. They found the fossils in the coastal cliffs around Lyme Regis, where they lived, a popular seaside resort area and one of the richest fossil locations in England. However, the cliffs could be unstable, and retrieving the fossils was really dangerous, as the best time to look for fossils was in the winter after a landslide, when the fallen rock exposed new fossils. A landslide contributed to the death of Mary's father when she was only 11. The next year, when Mary was 12, she and her brother Joseph dug up a 4-foot ichthyosaur skull, and a few months later, Mary found the rest of the skeleton. The family sold the full skeleton to a well-known collector who displayed it in London. This created considerable interest because at the time, most people believed in the biblical account of creation, which stated that the earth was only a few thousand years old, and that animals on Earth had never changed or evolved. Mary's fossils raised questions about the history of living things and of the Earth itself. As Mary continued to make important finds, her reputation grew. Despite her limited education, she read as much scientific literature as she could to learn more about fossils, and she also dissected modern animals, including fish and cuttlefish, in order to have a better understanding of anatomy. Her amazing discoveries include the first correctly identified ichthyosaur skeleton, the first two nearly complete plesiosaur skeletons, the first pterosaur skeleton located outside of Germany, and many different fish fossils. In 1826, Mary was able to save enough money to purchase a home with a glass storefront window for her shop, Anning's Fossil Depot. The move was important enough to be covered in the local paper, and many geologists and fossil collectors from Europe and America visited Mary in Lyme. King Frederick Augustus II of Saxony visited the shop in 1844 and purchased an ichthyosaur skeleton for his extensive natural history collection. However, as a woman, Anning was an outsider to the scientific community. At the time in England, women were not allowed to vote, hold public office, or attend university. The Geological Society of London also did not allow women to become members or even attend meetings as guests. Although Mary knew much more about fossils and geology than many of the wealthy fossilists she sold to, it was always the male geologist who published the scientific descriptions of the specimens she found, and most didn't even mention her name. However, many well-known and leading geologists and paleontologists corresponded with and visited Mary to ask her expertise. Anning's discoveries became key pieces of evidence for the theories of extinction and evolution. The fossils she found provided evidence that in previous eras, the Earth was inhabited by creatures different than those living today, and gave support to the theory that there had been an age of reptiles, where reptiles were the dominant form of animal life on Earth. These discoveries played a key role in developing what is now known as paleontology. It was not until the end of her life and afterward that Mary Anning began to receive the recognition she deserved. In the last years of her life, the Geological Society raised money from its members to help her with her expenses, and the Dorset County Museum made her an honorary member. After her death, the members of the Geological Society contributed to a stained glass window in her memory, and the president of the Geological Society wrote a eulogy that he read in a meeting and published, the first such eulogy given for a woman. Over the years, her story has grown to be seen as inspirational, and more people have come to know the story of Mary Anning.
Earlier, I gave you some clues to guess what's the most important tool you want to take with you when you're looking for fossils. Did you guess what it is? If you guessed a hammer, you were right. So this isn't just any type of hammer. This is a rock hammer. Rock hammers are a little heavier than normal hammers. They have a flat end to strike rocks with and a pick end to pry them apart. We want to pry them apart because fossils exist between the layers in sedimentary rocks. Now that you have all the tools you'll need, let's go hunting for dinosaurs.
Edward Cope and Othniel Marsh were two men unlike any before seen in history. Their rivalry over the discovery of dinosaur fossils during the latter half of the 19th century was well documented. But what was the outcome? Well, by 1892, both men had exhausted all of their monetary resources, and their very public feud had ruined their reputations both socially and professionally. It was a very sad end for both men, whose love of dinosaurs had ruined what could have been a fruitful professional relationship. But who won? Well, by all accounts, we did. You see, Between the two men, more than 136 new species of dinosaur were discovered during that period, including some of the most famous ones like Triceratops, Apatosaurus, and Stegosaurus. Marsh's findings and funding led to the creation of the Peabody Museum of Natural History at Yale University, and Cope sold most of his collections to the American Museum of Natural History in New York. But perhaps most important is the curiosity the two sparked in the American public. Dinosaurs, which had only been classified 20 years before the feud began, crept into the American imagination and stayed there. Thank you, Mr. Cope and Mr. Marsh. I'm sure you'd be happy to know how much we all love dinosaurs. Well, that's it for this edition of Plastifeet Theater. Good night and good hunting.
All right, everybody, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you'd like more resources and information, you can go to our website, aadl.org/The Saturday Show. And if you'd like to write in to myself or Otto, you can send an email to tss@aadl.org. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time,